Okay, I chose to research a flipped classroom. What is a flipped classroom? Basically, what it means is instead of doing homework at home and teaching during the day, you record a lecture or you use like Khan Academy or things like that, and the students do like the note-taking process or listen to the lecture at home, and then when they get to school, you can do activities, homework, things like that, projects. Um, the name comes from FLIP. F stands for flexible environment, meaning sometimes you're uh, doing the lecture at home. L is learning culture. This is more student-centered, and we talk about that a little later, uh, more so than the traditional teacher-centered lecturing. At least that's what I do anyways. 3 is intentional content, meaning as an educator, you have to think about how education is used to provide fluency and how it develops understanding for students. P is for professional educator. You're going to have to continually adjust and provide feedback to students. I chose it because I thought it was a really interesting concept. I like the idea that this maybe gives students the freedom to work at their own pace. So, I feel like it's a way to truly individualize your instruction because a lot of times we have kids during a lesson, you have kids who get it right away and want to get started on the homework and are ready to get going. And then you have kids that don't really get it and need more help and more examples. And a lot of the times we are just kind of teaching to the middle and hoping that as the kids do the homework, they get it. And we don't, at least me, anyways, I don't do a good job of providing enrichment activities for my students who get it right away so that they develop deeper understandings. Um, and I really like the idea that students can take ownership of their learning and that it is student centered and it's not really about what I'm saying necessarily. What research supports a flipped classroom? There isn't a lot of research out there. Um, I read one study about engagement in um, flipped classrooms, student engagement, and a lot of it depends on the type of students you have, um, how effective the teacher is, and things like that, um, along with your instructional strategies. And that same study found that flipped classrooms had 45% more student-centered actions than a non-flipped classroom, which is a very high percentage. Um, the thought process with this study that I read showed that if you have more engagement, then you are more likely to have higher success. So that's why they were examining it. And since there isn't a whole lot of studies about it, I kind of want to do my own little test about it, and we'll get to more of that later. Learning theories in a flipped classroom. Uh, there were probably about 5 or so mentioned. The 3 that stood out to me would be the cognitive learning theory because we had talked about that uh, before in class, and that's more of how students learned. It also mentioned the zone of proximal development, which is the student ready to learn this, or do they need to go back and maybe learn some other things? And then the self-determination theory, which does a lot with how students are. Like, are they highly motivated and ready to learn? And do they see good grades as achievement? And so on. How does a flipped classroom address mathematics teaching practice? teaching practices and principles to action. A lot of it is based on your classroom activities that you do during your flipped time. So instead of just doing homework assignments at home, they're watching your video lessons. One of the articles that I read talked about the different kinds of approaches to flipped classroom. If I were to do it, I think I already record my lessons. So I think I would have my students go through that recording and take notes on it in order to be prepared for class the next day. Um, and I have one of the issues I had with flipped classroom is allowing the students to, like, how much leniency do we have with students learning at their own pace? And I think establishing goals is a good way to make sure that they still stay on pace in order to get the most out of their math class. Um, Tasks that promote reasoning. A lot of my answers are deal with the activities. So like you have students try to solve problems in different ways, and then you can create a class discussion on it. You can have a student explain why and how they got to that conclusion, and then you as a class, you as an educator can guide the class in a discussion about why or why not that wouldn't be an effective way, or is effective. You have to be careful with that because um, kids are very sensitive nowadays, but um, use and connect mathematical representations. There's a lot of opportunities for enrichment activities to build deeper understandings. Because if you have a student who got it right away and kind of went through the homework already, you can say, hey, what would happen if you did this to the formula, or what would happen if you're looking at x cubed instead of x squared. Those aren't great examples, but that's where I'm at right now. Pose purposeful questions. That's kind of just on the teacher, and that's regardless of what type of classroom you're in. Maybe with a flipped classroom, you could end up with students asking more purposeful questions than in a standard classroom. Build procedural fluency. So since they're doing homework and activities during the class period, they have a chance to be corrected kind of right away. So if they are building bad habits, you can kind of correct those quicker, or they have the guidance of the teacher. So that if they are struggling, you can have the teacher kind of give them a little hint to lead them in the right direction so that they still struggle, but they still get that sense of accomplishment of getting it themselves. And again, as I said, it adjusts to each student's learning. So those standards now. Again, I've kind of already said that, and I'm not going to read the PowerPoint to you. Modeling with mathematics. I do think it gives you more of an opportunity. An example I have is to build your own putt-putt course and draw in the best shot for completing each hole. So you'd have to use angles and geometry and things like that. I think I did that in a summer camp where I think Dr. Young was even there too, and that was really cool. Attend to precision. Again, a lot of it is with the classroom discussion and evaluating why an answer isn't a good answer or a good estimate, or why the process that a student went through was the right way to do it. Okay. I believe that a flipped classroom aligns with these productive beliefs from our books, or just book, not books, but um, since they're going at their own pace, they kind of get to explore and solve mathematical problems. As a teacher, it's your job to engage them in tasks with the activities you create for them to do in class, and you're facilitating discussion um, to give the students a deeper understanding. And it's the student's role to be actively involved, whether it be going through the lecture at home or doing the activities, um, and so on. Unproductive beliefs, these are kind of my worries about a flipped classroom, that students will just want to be given the procedure so that they can just go for it. That's kind of how I was in high school. I didn't want to come to the conclusion myself. I wanted you to show me how to do it so that I could go do it. Um, there's going to be issues with students doing their work at home, because no matter what classroom setting you are in, if a student is required to do stuff at home, there's always going to be some student that does not do those. That doesn't do what they're supposed to be doing. Um, I do worry about students um, being capable of reaching their goals and not doing it because they feel like they get to go on their own pace, so they're going to do the absolute bare minimum. Um, Quite a few of my students are highly motivated, but there's also some kids who don't want to be here at all. And while I have good relationships with them, they don't want to do the homework. They're here because they have to be. Um, so I would have to do a good job of trying to engage them in the activities and in the discussions so that they at least get something out of it, even if they're not doing the lectures at home. How do I plan on making my classroom a flipped classroom? Depending on if this assignment is for the semester, I have two geometry sections, so in the upcoming chapters, I could try and do one where one section is flipped and the other one is not. If this is like for more of a um, permanent type thing, how I would do it is I would do some research um, over the summer, and I could split it multiple ways. I could do um, flipped the second semester and see how in both my classes and see how those test scores um, compare to first semesters, or I could flip next semesters and compare them to scores from this year. I don't really know what the better option is, um, but I think it would be very interesting to see. I know there are of course different variables, as in like what kind of students you have in each class, the content covered. So that's why I was worried about doing the different semesters as far as like comparing from first semester to second semester scores. And also in geometry, first semester is proofs, and a lot of kids don't do great in proofs because they think it's stupid and don't like it. So I think my better option would probably be doing maybe like first or second semester of next year and then comparing it to first or second semester of this year, even though the students are different, but it's the same content. Um, Here are some of my sources, and there are the last set of sources.